Eric Adams finds out what happens when you question the regime. No, I'm totally kidding, you guys. It's a complete coincidence, of course, that somebody comes up with a Me Too allegation 2 weeks after Eric Adams is raided by the FBI. But we'll talk about what happened, what he's being accused of, what this means for the future, and where we go from there. In other news, the Donald, in an election bid, says he's seriously looking at a repeal and replace, there's that word again, replace, for the ACA. So we'll be talking about what that means, why this also pushes me off the Trump train again, and where we go from there. Derek Chauvin is stabbed in prison. It's a little bit weird because it's almost like that's something that they wanted to happen there, but we'll be talking about what's happening with that, where we go, and what we do with that. And an explosion at the Rainbow Bridge in Niagara sparks several leaders in the Republican Party to say that this is terrorism and this is border policy. Now, they're telling us that this was not a terrorist act. We'll go over some of this, some of the mainline stories, some of what I do believe and what I don't believe, and much, much more over here on your weekly dose of news. So, strap yourselves in, find some friends, get a snack, and buckle up for the next couple hours, because we're going to go over all the news of the week and more over here on Contemporary. And take back the holly and mistletoe. Silver bells that ring. If I wrote a letter to Santa Claus, I would ask for just one thing. I am J. Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good evening, Edheads. Welcome to Contemporary. My name is J. Edgar, and this is your weekly news, which, I mean, given how packed the stack is, we might have to go back to at least 2 days a week now. This was a little bit of my fear when I started going in and doing this, and going back to weekly. Now, I mean, this is not going to ease up on my work schedule, I can tell you that right off the bat, but I did it in a low point, in a lull, where we actually could conceivably do all the news of a week in 2 hours. And as we edge closer and closer and closer to an election year, which is, by the way, in 5 short weeks, it's an election year. Just so you know, in 5 weeks, this is going to become 24/7 news coverage of we hate Donald Trump and everybody needs to jump in and go for Joe, and we hate Joe, and is it going to be Gavin? Is it going to be Klobuchar? Is it going to be... who is it going to be? I mean, we might have to go more than just one night a week at some point here. I can try and cover some of the stuff while we're doing gaming stuff too, but, I mean, I'm realistically looking at the stack right now, and it's going to be there. Also doing a short experiment on, I think, towards through the rest of the year. I'm going to be doing this experiment to run every other week between 6 and 7. So next week we'll start at 6 again. Just because I want to try to accommodate for everybody else. That's been something I've been trying to do since I moved. I know it was easy when I was first thing in the morning, get up at 7 and go. Unfortunately, as I've mentioned, my work schedule does not allow for that anymore. So that's going to be one of the side effects of this here. But I'm trying to accommodate because I do want to give the news to more people live. I do appreciate, by the way, everybody, and I look at the statistics, everybody who comes back and watches the program after the fact. I can see how many people download it over on Spotify, how many people do that, how many people watch the re-up, because I blank this all out and I re-upload this after the fact. And I do thank you guys, seriously, from the bottom of my heart, who can't come and join live, who come back and watch the replay. Thank you so much for that. But I know that when I had my family emergency about 3 weeks ago, and I did still come back and stream only an hour later, we did have a few more people there. Now, I don't know if people were just trying to figure out what happened in my family, or if that time slot just worked better for people, but I'll be watching and I'll be seeing how many people come in throughout the stream. And don't be afraid to say hi either, by the way, over on Rumble and over on the main channels. I really appreciate that stuff, and the more that you talk, the more they put me up on the front page. Something I did notice when I did my video game streams, and we actually had some chatter coming in on Fallout Friday this past week. I noticed I was getting promoted a lot more the more the chat came in. So however you feel about what you're hearing, go ahead and tell me about it. I do check in with chat between topics, but that is enough filibustering for what we have right now, because we have a ton of stuff to go over here today. As mentioned before, we might be getting to the point where we might actually have to split off to 2 days. We'll see what happens with that. I will assess as we go weekly, but for now, let's get into it and let's get started. Hey, by the end of the year, we might be back to 5 days, and by Valentine's Day, who knows? We could actually be back to a 2-hour stream every single day, every single night, because it's already starting to look like that. Let's get the live chats up here so I can see what you guys are doing. Silence over on the Rumble side, of course. Come back in and join us over there if you're interested in what it is that's being said over here. On the main channel, I've got the Mogwai. Good evening. Please don't tell me Mariah has woken from her slumber. Hide your kids. We're going to be talking about Mariah, actually, in things I like and things I hate at the end, with a little bit of a surprise and, of course, my annual reminder of a song that some people forget about. So we'll see what's happening with that, where this goes, and let's get started with the news for the day. And we're going to start, well, first I'm going to take this tagline out of there that I forgot to change. And we're going to start with the title card today is what's going to start us off today. Eric Adams is on the front of the news for the day. Colin Rugg starting off. Just in, New York City Mayor Eric Adams has been accused of sexually assaulting someone in 1993. The news comes just weeks after the FBI seized his phones relating to a federal corruption investigation. Plaintiff was sexually assaulted by defendant Eric Adams in New York in 1993. While they both worked for the city of New York, the summons read. The filing accuses Adams of sexual assault, battery, and employment discrimination on the basis of the plaintiff's gender and sex, retaliation, hostile work environment, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The unnamed, and that's going to be important as we go later on too, accuser is seeking $5 million from Adams. Adams says he doesn't even know the accuser, which, of course, my first question is does Adams know who it is that's accusing him? Now, in a situation where the plaintiff is unnamed, of course he can come back out and say he doesn't know who it is because it's unnamed to the rest of us. But if the name has been revealed to Adams, at least, he can make an assessment as to whether or not he himself knows who the accuser is or not. But it's so interesting, again, that this comes to like 2 weeks after he was raided by the FBI. And, I mean, even right then and there, people looked at that and said, hey, this seems to be in response to him speaking out against the Biden admin. We can't prove that because there's been no statement from the Biden admin saying, hey man, hey, this guy, he spoke out against us and look at this, man, we're son of a bitch. He's going to get the money, man. Come on, man. We, of course, don't have anything like that, but we also look at the realistic side of things of he started speaking out against the fact that, hey, we're pulling all these immigrants in, we're getting no help from the Biden admin, hey, maybe we should do something about the border. And suddenly his campaign manager is raided, and then next thing you know, hashtag me too! And he got raided too at some point with us here. Let's read from Axios. Mayor Adams accused of sexual assault in 1993 from Rebecca Falconer. New York City Mayor Eric Adams vigorously denies allegations that he sexually assaulted a woman in 93, a City Hall spokesperson said on Thursday. The complaint was filed Wednesday under New York's Adult Survivors Act, which created a one-year window for New Yorkers to sue people they say sexually assaulted them regardless of the date of the allegation. That window ends on Friday, and there's been a rush of lawsuits filed under this law, including against actor Jamie Foxx, Guns N' Roses singer Axl Rose. Really, Axl Rose? Yeah, I don't buy that one. Both of whom have denied the allegations. The woman suing Adams, who is seeking at least $5 million in damages, alleges in a New York State court summons that the mayor assaulted her when they worked together for the city of New York, the Messenger first reported. The nature of this action is sexual assault, battery, and employment discrimination in the basis of the plaintiff's gender and sex retaliation, hostile work environment, and intentional infliction of emotional distress, says the filing, which also names the city of New York and the NYPD's Transit Bureau as the other defendants. The complaint does not elaborate any further. The mayor does not know who this person is. If they've ever met, he doesn't recall it, but he would never do anything to physically harm another person, the City Hall spokesperson said in an emailed statement on Thursday. So, it does appear that, yes, the defendant may be named to the plaintiff may be named to Eric Adams himself, but it's not being released out to the public at this point. Now, he could come back out and blow a hole open in this, so to speak. And then we'll be in a situation of he said, she said, and hashtag believe all women and all the rest of the stuff. There are a few important things with this to talk about on top of everything. Now, number one, unnamed source. My question here at this point is, are we trying to prevent 4chan going through and posting this person's entire voting history, donor history, etc.? Because that'd be the first place that my mind would go at something like this, where they're going very, very extra hard to protect the identity of the person, which kind of tells me that this is a load of shit. One of the things that we noted when we went through the Blasey Ford, and even some of the Tara Reid allegations, too, coming from the other direction. When we had allegations like this, the E. Jean Carroll allegations, things like that. When we go through things like this, these stories are so full of holes, and again, in both directions. I am not going to sit here and say that this is an automatic thing that goes against people that I don't like. There are some problems that I have with Tara Reid's story and the fact that she didn't come forward until he was on his way to becoming president. I believe it a little bit more with Biden because of his sniffy things, but still, and I've been very fair about this too. The only people that know what happened in that Senate hallway are Tara Reid and Joe Biden. Everybody else has to speculate based on what he said and what she said. And unfortunately, which party that person likes more. The only two people that know what happened in that dressing room in New York are Elizabeth Jean Carroll and Donald John Trump. Nobody else in the world will ever know exactly what happened in that room, in that dressing room. We can speculate based on what he said and what she said, how believable the stories are, and unfortunately who we like better. Nobody else knows what happened in that room. Nobody knows what happened in that room except for, why can't I think of the justice's name? I covered him so, Kavanaugh. I don't know why Kavanaugh slipped out of my mind. Nobody knows what happened in that room except for Brett Kavanaugh and Christine Blasey Ford. The rest of us can speculate based on evidence that's put before us. the stories of what he said and she said. But nobody else will ever know what's in that room. And the same thing with Eric Adams and unnamed defendant number 1. Nobody actually knows what happened within the Transit Authority in 1993, except for Eric Adams and unnamed defendant 1. I'm sorry, unnamed plaintiff 1. The rest of us can speculate based on the timing, based on the fact that we don't know who this person is, and a host of other things, but nobody will ever know what happened in there except for those 2 people. So, I can say draw your own conclusions. I have a lot of questions about this, especially given the fact, again, that the person is unnamed. So, of course, 4chan can't go back and check all that. So, that is what's happening to Eric Adams in the wake of him speaking out against the admin on top of it here. Let's go check over here. The Mogwai says, by welcoming you to the jungle, it means by no means granted Mr. Rose the right to knock on heaven's door or feel the victim's November rain. I like that. I'm glad I didn't pre-read that. Though talking to her like a sweet child of mine did not make it okay for him to go to Paradise City and live and let die. That's awesome. That's fucking awesome. Thank you, the Mogwai, for that. Let's see. Let's skip over the one from the New York Post to go to the other one from the New York Post here. On some of the defense of this from the New York Post. Ex-New York Governor David Paterson defends Eric Adams over Orwellian FBI probe. From Carl Campanile. So this is going back, of course, to the election racketeering that he supposedly did with Turkey. Let's read. Former New York Governor David Paterson defended Eric Adams amid the federal probe into fundraising during his 2021 campaign, describing the FBI's action as Orwellian. Patterson, during an interview on WABC's 770 AM's The Cats Roundtable Sunday, said the FBI's decision to raid the homes of Adams' aides while the mayor was in Washington, D.C. to push for more federal assistance to address the migrant crisis and to confront him in his vehicle to retrieve his mobile devices seems very unusual. They bother the mayor by going to his fundraiser's home on the same day that he's coming to Washington to talk to the White House about the migration situation, and then they run up on him at some event and say they wanted security to get out of the way. They get in the car with him, they take his cell phones, his electric equipment, he told host John Katzimatidis. That's sounding a little more Orwellian to me than what has gone on in the past. Patterson, who served as New York's first black governor after Eliot Spitzer resigned over a prostitution scandal, questioned the way that the investigation has been handled. He noted that Adams is grappling to close a budget gap by cutting police manpower and funding to schools and the arts, attributed in part to the burgeoning cost to shelter tens of thousands of asylum seekers. I would be shocked to find out that they did this because the mayor was criticizing Biden administration on migration while they were sending migrants. That would be an all-time low. I would be shocked, Patterson said. I'm not shocked. I've seen how this regime goes, all the way back to the Clintons. And it probably went on long before that. It's just I was too young to remember it before that. The FBI and Manhattan federal prosecutors are investigating whether Adams' 2021 campaign conspired to accept illegal donations, including from straw donors, with links to Turkey via a Brooklyn construction company. No, that's not necessarily what they're doing. Because this kind of stuff, unfortunately, does happen all the time. And a part of the reason it happens all the time is so that you can't go back and speak out against the regime, because they will turn around and use the powers that be to try to shut you up. Because, oh hey, remember that time that we looked the other way when you took an illegal campaign contribution? Yeah, that's not going to happen anymore. So, that is what's happening there. In other news from New York, and then we're going to move on to my state, Eric Adams dismisses Cuomo for mayor talk. Really? One of my big questions here is, does he think he could actually do this? And get away with this? Like, they Me Too'd this dude hard. And forced him to resign. And that stuff is still going to be out there. Although, we do have a captive mainstream media that may or may not speak about it because it's inconvenient here. Let's read. Nick Reisman reporting for Politico. Eric Adams threw cold water on the prospect of former Governor Andrew Cuomo running for the mayor of New York City. Adams, in a radio interview on Monday, dismissed talk of Cuomo seeking his job, though acknowledged the three-term former governor is considering some sort of comeback to politics following his 2021 resignation. I'm pretty sure once somebody came out and said, hey, you grabbed the titties, it's over for you. Bravo for you sticking your middle finger up at the system. Bravo for that, but I don't know how well it's going to work out for you. We'll see what happens with that. We talk often, Adams told La Mega 97.9. I don't see him running for mayor. I think he's looking at his next political move, and there's a lot of things that he can look at right now. But I have to be ready to run New York, and that's what I'm focused on doing right now. Politico reported last week Cuomo was weighing a bid for mayor as Adams' campaign is under scrutiny by federal investigators, stemming from whether it colluded with the Turkish government in exchange for official favors. God, they even use the same language. And expect us not to notice. Now, Cuomo, mayor, I mean, he'd fit right in with the New York personality. And he is, I believe, an Italian from New York, from Manhattan, isn't he? That's a possibility, but, I mean, my big question here is, how does he overcome the accusations that forced him to step down before, when you know that there are going to be a cavalcade of independent commentators that are going to be bringing this stuff back up? You can't ignore it forever. I can't see Jimmy Carter being smart enough to do stuff like this. Clinton's, Obama, and Biden, yes. It's not necessarily Jimmy Carter being smart enough to do stuff like this. It's Jimmy Carter being in the loop enough to do stuff like this. They Me Too'd Cuomo so hard, it fucked his brother, says the Mogwai. Yes, they did. All right, so that is New York politics for the day. Let's talk Wisconsin politics out of Madison. Report says Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers used alternate email under the name of Hall of Fame pitcher. I'm going to talk about this in one of my biggest gripes with politics in just a moment. But let's read what's going on here first. Scott Bauer reporting. Wisconsin's Governor Tony Evers has been using an alternative state email account under the name of a late Hall of Fame baseball player as a security measure, a spokesperson said on Monday. Evers, a Democrat, used a taxpayer-funded email account with the name Warren Spahn at wisconsin.gov to discuss public business with top-level cabinet appointees and others. The conservative outlet Wisconsin Right Now first reported on Sunday. Warren Spahn is a Hall of Fame former Milwaukee Braves pitcher, before they moved to Atlanta, of course. Evers spokesperson Britt Kudabak on Monday said the use of the alias email address is common. Doesn't make it right. As a matter of digital security, dignitaries in the state of Wisconsin have alias email addresses, including the governor, first lady, and lieutenant governor, as has been the case for at least the last decade that I'm aware of, including under former Governor Walker. Kudabak said, that doesn't make it right. Bill Luters, president of the Wisconsin Freedom of Information Council, said that he was troubled about the use of what he called phantom email addresses, and said that he had never heard of that practice before. No, it's been happening for quite a while. We've spent the last 3 years talking about the houseplant-in-chief doing it. It happens all the goddamn time. It doesn't make it right. I don't know if they're common or uncommon, Luters said. I do know if they're used for public business, they're subject to the records law. Yes, that is true. Responsive emails requested under the state open records law are always released in accordance with state law, no matter what account they are sent from. KTZed. Open records requests responses from Ever's admin routinely contain language that says all identifiers of non-public email addresses are redacted. Making this information available would significantly hinder these officials' ability to communicate and work efficiently, the boilerplate language says, including in a response to the Associated Press on September 16, 2022. There's minimal harm to the public interest. No, there's not. Given that there are numerous public means to communicate with the Office of the Governor and the Office of Lieutenant Governor, and the only address is redacted, not remaining email content. Wisconsin Right Now reported that it asked for all communications to and from Warren Spahn at wisconsin.gov. From 2018 to 2023, the governor's office rejected the request as being too broad, saying in a response email sent November 22nd that more than 17,000 emails were found. And that's, of course, why they're doing this under an alternate. Now, Tony Evers at wisconsin.gov is a public access email address. You barely have to have any sort of credentials that you can go back up and say, hey, I want to see what's in these emails, and the state of Wisconsin will provide them at a moment's notice. But they won't do that for like every employee in the state of Wisconsin. Like, if I hated myself enough to go work for the state of Wisconsin, it is likely that it would take a little bit more of a Freedom of Information Act and a few more hurdles to get my personal emails from the state of Wisconsin. Now, not that I would ever do anything with the state of Wisconsin because I don't trust the government. Part of the reason I won't work for them. But we're using this as a what if here. Therefore, if you don't know what the address is, I mean, you're just looking at a random employee. Or you think you're looking at a random employee when you see Warren Spahn at wisconsin.gov. And now, suddenly the request is too broad. We can't back and use this. And again, as I mentioned before, Evers came out almost immediately and said, Scott Walker did it all the time. Bitch, that doesn't make it right. I mean, we have the same problem when they talk about Hunter Biden's Chinese ties, his influence from China, his influence in the Ukraine, how that's influenced his father's decisions, which it has. You cannot tell me that it hasn't. And they've stopped trying to tell you that it hasn't, too, by the way. Because the first thing they do when you bring that up is they pip it out to, but Jared Kushner got $2 billion from the Saudis. Okay, investigate that and see if you can find anything. If it, show me the invoice of that, and that doesn't make it right. And yes, by the way, if Kushner was doing official business and getting a bribe to do so, throw his fucking ass in prison. Absolutely. I love it because I'm not a Trump fan. I love it when I bring that up too. Because these people think that they can just shut down the argument by saying, but a Trump associate did it. And they think, assuming that I'm against Biden, that I'm like this big Trump worshiper super fan always. From WEAU, Evers responded to reports about his use of an alternate state email under the name of a Hall of Fame baseball player. During a visit to the Feed My People food bank in Eau Claire on November 28th, today, Evers said his alias email addresses are used as a matter of digital security and are common. The fact of the matter is that it was done by my predecessor, and frankly, it's done to kind of protect my work time, and it doesn't impact anybody. Okay, then release the emails. I want to see what's in them. People get the information they want when they ask for it. Apparently not, because they rejected the request and said, that's too broad. And it works, so I don't have any plans of changing it, Evers said. Well, it may be time to come back out and change the law, so you can't do that anymore. Again, I don't give a damn how much I like the other politician that did it. If it's wrong, it's wrong. And it is very wrong to do that. And with the with the governor's mansion coming out and rejecting the request, saying, your request is too broad. That is a big indicator as to why it's not right. Let's see. Didn't David Weiner try this and it almost did? Tell those meddling kids and their Chris Hansen. I don't know who David Weiner is. I'm a little bit concerned by how many people are named Weiner in the government, by the way. Will you please see if you can get her to go out? I'll try. I don't know who she is, but, I mean, if she's good looking, I'll try. That's a lot of emails. Do you get free tickets to the Brewers if you work for the state? Not worth it. Well, I'm a Red Sox fan too, so still not worth it. Back to the RNC side. From the Hill. RNC Chair Ronna Romney McDaniel brushes off donor concerns. There's nothing unusual about this. From Julia Manchester. Republican National Committee Chair Ronna McDaniel downplayed donor concerns following reporting on the GOP finances, saying the situation is not unusual. On Monday, the Washington Post, where democracy goes to die in darkness, reported concerns over the National Party's finances were growing as donations to the RNC appeared to drop ahead of next year's presidential election. The Post noted that the RNC reported having $9.1 million in the bank in October, which is significantly less than the $20 million the party reported having on hand at the same point in the 2016 campaign cycle. Meanwhile, the DNC reported having $17.7 million in cash on hand in October. Now, I want to point something else out with this too. It is concerning, by the way, that they have this low of a donor threshold. But the only people who can afford to donate right now are the rich. All those small dollar donations are being squandered away by the fact that people are taking out second and third jobs just to fucking live. I've thrown campaign dollars at various candidates before in my past, people that I've believed in, etc. I wouldn't do that right now. And I could even afford to do it right now more than I could in the past. But I'm looking at the very real possibility that inflation gets higher, my grocery bill gets more and more expensive as the weeks go on, and there's always that possibility that last in, first out, if the layoff train ever does manage to come. Given the work ethic that I have at work, I don't think it's going to happen, but I always remember that's the possibility. And it's just me I have to look out for. I don't have a family like the other two people I work for, which means I actually may volunteer to go first. Usually a sucker for, hey, make sure the kids stay fed. However, McDaniel argued in an interview with the publication that the numbers are not indicative of the RNC's financial prowess, but they did show donors are still focused on donating to individual presidential candidates. I think there's more donors just fully committed to their candidate right now, saying, I'm all in, and once the nominee is set, I'll be there. That's what I hear more than anything, and they're really solidly in the camps of their candidate, which is normal, McDaniel said to the publication. There's nothing unusual about this because they know that once their candidate gets in, that we will merge and we'll be working together to win the White House. The party also noted that it's already sent staff to 15 swing states to get a head start on the get out the vote efforts and the election monitoring. Additionally, it said it has filed more than 70 election integrity lawsuits and established a permanent election integrity department. The RNC under McDaniel also launched the Bank Your Vote program to encourage Republicans to vote early and by mail. The RNC will continue to communicate with all the campaigns and candidates as we look forward to putting up our battle-tested infrastructure behind our presidential nominee, the RNC spokesperson said, in spite of the fact that you lost the presidency in 2020, honk honk, and you don't put up money to candidates that are in easily winnable races otherwise, unless Mitch McConnell says, okay, yes, that's somebody that I can work with in the Senate. Republicans note that without transfers and when comparing the RNC's sister companies and Democratic committees, the RNC beats the other committees in direct fundraising by $10 million, with the exception of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. Additionally, the party noted that when comparing the RNC's current fundraising, the DNC's fundraising without an incumbent in 2020 and 2016, the RNC is either on par with the DNC or outraising it. Well, technically you have an incumbent right now, but I don't know. I think she's going to throw Trump under the bus. I do think that. I laugh so much at the fact that, I mean, this woman is almost universally hated. And the DeSantis people want to come out and say, well, DeSantis always hated her. No, he didn't. He was right in her pocket when he was still getting along with the Donald. He did not always hate her. And yes, the Donald stumped to get her put back in. What did I just say when they talked about Scott Walker using an alternate email? That doesn't make it right. She sucks at her job. So, that's Ronna Romney right there. Mitt Romney, with his weight into this one. Mittens. The Calvin Coolidge Project reporting just in. Mitt Romney says he'll vote for Democrats if Trump or Ramaswamy is the GOP nominee. Let's have a listen.
Who do you like in the Republican field?
Anybody. I'd be happy to support virtually any one of the Republicans. Maybe not Vivek, but the others that are running would be acceptable to me, and I'd be happy to vote for them. I'd be happy to vote for a number of the Democrats too. I mean, it would be an upgrade from, in my opinion, from Donald Trump and perhaps also from Joe Biden. Look, I like President Biden.
Of course you
do. Very charming, engaging person.
Come on, man.
I agree with him, but most places I disagree with him. I think he's made all sorts of terrible mistakes, but I would like to see someone else run.
Who do you like in the Republican?
So, as far as Mittens goes, Mittens is doing something that I've theorized that Hillary did a few months ago. You remember, I don't think it was even a few months ago. I think it was just back in October. But you remember back in October where Hillary Clinton said that all the Trump people needed to go into a sort of camp where they could be retaught how to be decent people. Basically coming out and saying that they needed to be rounded up and put in a re-education camp. I don't for a second believe that she actually believes that. But Hillary Clinton got absolutely shafted by the DNC, by her party. She is so horrifically unpopular that Joe Biden could beat her. She's so horrifically unpopular that Donald Trump, with a 24/7 news cycle of slander, could beat her. And I think that she was doing damage on the way back out. I think Mittens is doing that too. Remember, Romney has nothing to lose. He's not seeking a re-election this term. And I believe, if I remember correctly, he's up in 24. Or 25 rather. Does Romney's term expire? 25. Yep. So basically after November, he doesn't have to give a damn. And I think he's walking out the door, flipping the Zippo and dropping it on the ground on his way out. Honestly. I wouldn't take what he has to say too seriously at all. Yes, Dual Helix weighing in on that one. Charming and engaging person. What the fuck? What the fuck indeed? You know what? I just realized I was going to put Christmas music up today. Not our regular video game stuff. We'll have to do that next week. It's after Thanksgiving. We can do Christmas lo-fi. This stupidity. You know when I come out on X and say that I'm going to leave the top of the line, the top line on the ticket blank? Because I can't vote for anybody that's in the field. No Democrat, no Republican. It's because of this shit right here. From the Hill. Trump slams evangelical leader who endorsed DeSantis as a scammer. From Steph Danielle Thomas. Former President Trump turned his ire onto influential Iowa evangelical leader Bob Vander Plaats after he announced his endorsement of Florida man Ron DeSantis earlier this week. Bob Vander Plaats, the former high school accountant from Iowa, will do anything to win, something which he hasn't done in many, many years, which that is a fair point, by the way. Trump wrote on Saturday on Truth Social, "He's no more for scamming candidates than he is for victory. But now he's going to go around using disinformation from the champions of the art, the Democrats. I don't believe anything that Bob Vander Plaats says. Anyone who would take over $95,000 and then endorse a candidate who's going nowhere, it's not what elections are all about." So a little bit of history on Vander Plaats. We talked a little bit about this last week. But Bob Vander Plaats is supposedly the gold standard for the Iowa endorsement. What I mean by that is he'll typically go and endorse somebody who, and we're talking about in closer races too, for the GOP field, because he is an evangelical leader in politics in the state of Iowa for their caucus system. And that person will typically go on to win in the past. Vander Plaats is best known for endorsing Ted Cruz, who went on to get curb stomped. So he doesn't have a very, very big victory chain as far as getting into the White House, but he's notable for Iowa. Although Iowa, of course, also doesn't have a very, very, very good track record of getting its candidates into the White House. Now, at this point, it's going to be different. Or it could be different. Let me rephrase that. I don't have a crystal ball. There's no Santeria being practiced here. But statistically, all likelihood tells me that when Iowa picks in their caucus this year, that person's going to go into the White House because, or at least get into contention to fight for the White House, honk honk, because the Donald is so lopsidedly ahead, even in that state's polling. Now, with that state's polling, the caucus system, and this not being a regular primary state, at least for the Republicans, the Democrats have changed that at this point with them. I still predict that this is going to be a much, much tighter race than what MAGA, in all of their splendor and glory, think it's going to be. I think it's going to be within 6 points. I still think the Donald is going to win Iowa, but I think he's going to win over DeSantis by 6 points. I think it's going to be within single digits. I think it's going to be very, very tight. I think he's going to fare much better in South Carolina, New Hampshire. And then when Super Tuesday rolls around, that's going to be the point where everybody starts getting out of there. And I do think that the single digit shakes it up a little bit. But given the national polling and given what I believe is going to happen in Iowa, yeah, I think that the Donald, as horrifying as it is to think that we have to do this for another 4 years of the media saying, he's Satan, he's going to kill us all, he breathed wrong, he's going to kill us all, he drank water the wrong way, he wants to kill all the... I probably can't say that on YouTube. It started with a J, and I'm thinking to myself that would have been taken out of context in a hurry. But, of course, we will see what happens with this. Vander Plaats not taking this one laying down. From Newsweek, evangelical leader fires back at the Donald. I have no author given on this one. Oh, yes, I do. It's just under the fairness meter. Khalida Raymond. There's a live chat up here. No dual helix. Iowa is not like Colorado that you can register as non-affiliated and choose which primary to vote in. Iowa is a caucus state. They don't go out to the polls to... I gotta look up the definition of a caucus to make sure I get this absolutely right, because I don't live in a caucus state. In some U.S. states, a meeting at which local members of a political party register their preference among candidates running for office or select delegates to attend a convention. I guess Hawaii has a caucus too, but basically it's a big conference. Like, they go out there, they get delegates out there, they make a big party out of it. They get people from all over the state of Iowa out there, and essentially they all kind of go gather to the camp that they want to go see in office, whether it be the people themselves, the delegates that they've chosen for their particular region. But it's a big well-to-do, it's a big popularity contest. It's actually something I'd like to experience, even though obviously I can't vote in Iowa's caucus because I don't live in Iowa. Actually, I think it would be... I'd like to see more states have a caucus, especially early states, because then you can go out, get your ideas out there, have a big party with it, court people, I would say the proper way, but yeah, no. I know what you're talking about, open primaries. And like in Wisconsin, I don't even have to register unaffiliated. I voted for Sanders in Wisconsin's primary last year because nobody took Joe Walsh seriously as a contender. The Donald had the nomination already. I would have, under normal circumstances, even though I'm an independent, I would have taken a Republican ballot, but it was all sewn up already. Bernie was in. And I wanted to change the statistics for Biden. I voted for Bernie in the primary in Wisconsin in 2020. I took a Dem ballot and I voted for Bernie. Just to fuck with Biden. That's what you're thinking. You never hear anything about Iowa till election season. Well, I hear a lot about Iowa because it's literally 20 minutes away from where I'm sitting. I can be inside of Iowa in 20 minutes. I think it might actually take a little bit longer if I stay on this side of the river, because I have to go down a little ways into Iowa before there's a bridge I can cross. Well, guy says, well, my emails are governed by Clinton. The first sign of spyware, they are deleted. Alright, let's read about Vanderplatz, an influential Iowa evangelical leader, has hit back at Donald Trump after former president accused him of scamming candidates. Vanderplatz, the president of the Family Leader Foundation, endorsed Florida man Ron DeSantis earlier this week, telling Fox News that Republicans need to find someone who can win in 2024. DeSantis has been trailing Trump in the polls, but Vanderplatz's backing could give him a boost in Iowa's Republican caucus, where evangelicals are a crucial voting bloc. The Christian conservative leader's endorsement triggered Trump's ire, with the former president taking to his Truth Social platform to criticize Vanderplatz for backing a candidate who's going nowhere. Which was, by the way, insanely fucking stupid. Vanderplatz firing back. LOL, real Trump is the only candidate ever who thought my endorsement would be for sale. He found out, and Reuters validated, I live by higher standards. And Iowa will exhibit higher standards when they choose Ron DeSantis over a chump. Yeah, we'll see how that goes in March, by the way. So, they're fighting against each other. And the Biden camp is laughing their balls off, watching it all go down. But hey, they wanted a messy primary, so. Pennsylvania news from the Associated Press. Federal judge says Pennsylvania mail-in ballots should still count if dated incorrectly. from Michael Rubicam. Mail-in ballots in Pennsylvania without accurate handwritten dates on their exterior envelopes must still be counted if they're received in time, a judge ruled on Tuesday, concluding that rejecting such ballots violates federal civil rights law. You know, in spite of the fact that there's no way to verify when they got sent or when ballot printer went brrr. The decision has implications for the 2024 presidential election in a key battleground state where Democrats have been far more likely to vote by mail than Republicans. Also, in a state that has mail-in ballots disallowed by its constitution, and yet they're still going to use them. In the latest lawsuit filed over a 2019 state voting law, District Judge Susan Paradise Baxter ruled that county boards election may no longer reject mail ballots that lack accurate handwritten dates on their return envelopes. Baxter said the date, which is required by state law, is irrelevant, helping election officials decide whether a ballot was received in time or whether the voter is qualified to cast a ballot. The GOP has repeatedly fought in court to get such ballots thrown out, part of a campaign to invalidate mail-in ballots and mail-in voting in Pennsylvania after then-President Trump baselessly claimed propaganda that in 2020 the mail balloting was rife with fraud. And they are hanging that in front of your face and saying, hey, we can get away with it again. Trust me. What if I want to vote by Sharpie on a watermelon? Well, I think according to this lawsuit, that makes it that your civil right. Dual helix. Axios reporting again. Trump says he's seriously looking at Obamacare alternatives. From Zachary Basu. Former President Trump revealed that he's seriously looking at alternatives to the ACA, calling the failure to repeal and replace Obamacare during his administration a low point for the Republican Party. There's that replace word again. Ahead of last year's midterms, Republicans effectively gave up on campaigning to kill the ACA, acknowledging that the program was popular and fully embedded in the U.S. healthcare system, which is a problem. Despite having full control of the White House and Congress, Republicans' long-running efforts to repeal and replace the ACA were defeated in 2017 when John McCain delivered his famous thumbs-down vote on the Senate floor. Democrats went on to make healthcare a defining issue of the 2018 midterms, powering a blue wave election, which the party decisively won back the House majority. Republicans, including the current presidential field, have since had little to say about the ACA or major healthcare reforms, even as the cost of care continues to rise. While they're saying the cost of Obamacare is out of control, plus it's not a good healthcare, Trump wrote in a post on Truth Social on Saturday. We had a couple of Republican senators who campaigned for 6 years against it, and then raised their hands not to terminate it. It was a low point for the Republican Party, but we should never give up. Biden campaign spokesman Amar Moussa drew attention to Trump's comments on X, suggesting Democrats would be happy to make relitigating the ACA an issue in the 2024 election. Now, I will give credit where credit is due. We did not get a repeal of the ACA, but we got a soft repeal of the ACA by executive order, which is why it came right the fuck back as soon as the Donald was out of office. See, taking the penalty away and letting people opt out of healthcare, which, if it would have stayed in longer, would have actually forced the healthcare providers to, sell healthcare instead of just, here, take whatever fucking crappy plan that we give you. Instead of hanging it out there like that, they'd actually have to go back and sell it, so they actually have to bring prices down to make it affordable, so you'll buy it instead of taking your chances. When I say that he effectively nullified it, I mean the part that was popular stayed in. The part where the insurance companies are forced to have you on even if you have a pre-existing condition. I don't agree with that personally, but I know that that's one of the big selling points that keeps the ACA on board, and it's one of the things that keeps getting brought up when Republicans talk about the repeal of the ACA, is the fact that you just want people with cancer to die. Again, I know that that's part of what's making it so expensive for everybody else, because the insurance companies have to take on literally everybody. It's the law. But for the people who wanted to opt out and didn't want to support the situation, they had the means to do so. The tax was still there, but it was lowered to 0 by executive order. In a compromise situation, although this would, of course, make the big insurance companies turn on the Republicans, obviously, but that, I think, would be the best way to at least start dismantling some of this. And again, making it so that the insurance companies have to sell you insurance instead of just making you a captive customer. Oh, you can actually opt out of it? Oh, please, we'll lower your premiums. How about 25% lower? Not enough? Okay, how about we take your deductible down a little bit? Just please buy insurance. That's the way it should be. Instead of, okay, well, take whatever crappy plan we put out there. I don't care if you can afford it or not. The law says you have to have it. Otherwise, you're going to be paying for it anyway. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. I'm going to side with some of the Democrats on this. And I don't think it's because of racism. Manny Davila over on X pointed out that the Republicans just want to repeal Obamacare because they can't stand the fact that a black man did it. Well, in Donald's case, with the mic drop moment from the Correspondence Center, I do think that that's one of the reasons that he wants to go back and disarm the signature legislation, is because Obama insulted him at the Correspondence Dinner, and he wants to take down his signature legislation. I do think there's an aspect of it of that in there. Speaking of which, we're going to talk a little bit about gag order here. Let's grab one from CNN. Two from CNN. Don't want to skip the Axios one. Trump tells appeals court that threats to judge and clerk in New York civil fraud trial do not justify a gag order. Okay. I'm going to look at this pragmatically. This is the Donald, the showman, the Donald, coming out here and saying, try it again. From Kara Scannell. Donald Trump urged a New York appeals court to continue to pause the gag order against him in a civil fraud trial, saying that threats to the judge and his law clerk do not justify limiting the former president's constitutional right to defend himself. And he would be right, by the way, but again, he's doing it in the stupidest way possible. But I also think it's a dare. I do. I think it's an absolute dare. Come on, you know you want to put a gag order on me. It's wildly unpopular. It makes you look like a tyrant. Come on, you know you want to do it. I definitely think that's what he's trying to play with that. Because even the ACLU came out under the first gag order and said, hey, are we the bad guys here? Lawyers for the New York Attorney General's office and the court last week urged the appeals court to put a gag order back in place following serious and credible threats that have inundated Judge Arthur Engoron's chambers since the trial began in October. Trump's attorneys wrote in a filing on Monday that the former president has never threatened the judge or his principal law clerk, and they can't be held responsible for actions taken by others, which is also true, by the way. They argued Trump's First Amendment rights to criticize and call out his perception of bias by the judge and his law clerk without retribution is essential to maintaining public confidence in the trial. So it is a dare, by the way. Come on, I dare you to put one on me. I dare you to put a gag order out there. You won't do it. No balls. At base, the disturbing behavior engaged in by the anonymous third-party actors towards the judges and principal law clerk publicly presiding over an extremely polarizing and high-profile trial merits appropriate security measures, Trump's attorneys wrote. However, it does not justify the wholesale abrogation of petitioners' First Amendment rights in a proceeding of immense stakes to petitioners, which has been compromised by the introduction of partisan bias on the bench now. The anonymous side of that also adds an interesting twist to this as well. Because we remember when X was taken over by Elon, that there were Reddit threads out there of people who were saying, okay, let's make 1 million bot accounts, let's make 1 million sock accounts, and flood Twitter with the N-word as much as we can. And the F-word, that's a slur for gay people. Let's go ahead and flood it with that, and then we'll come back out and say that the entire platform is flooded with hate, and all the advertisers need to go back and pull back out. Now, these anonymous accounts are now coming back out and saying, Judge Engeron, you're doing this to our god, Trump. We're going to come back out here. And probably can't say that on YouTube either. Censored because YouTube is a highly censored platform. And I'm sure that there are Reddit threads out there, again, that are saying, hey, go in there and pose as a Trump supporter as soon as the gag order is lifted, and go tell Engeron that you're going to do something that I probably still can't say on YouTube. So there is that aspect of things out there. But again, the Donald cannot be held responsible for things that other people do. And CNN is going to come out and try to spin it as he is specifically making the threats. We've got a video of the discussion behind this. Court weighs gag order in Trump's federal election trial. Looks like we've got Jake Tapper, and I don't recognize these other two, talking about this. Let's have a listen.
Continues the fight against a gag order in his New York civil fraud trial, telling an appeals court today that criticizing the judge is his First Amendment right. The judge in that case, Arthur Engoron, first imposed the gag order to prevent Trump from making any statements about him and his court staff, specifically his clerk, after Trump posted a baseless social media allegation involving the judge's principal law clerk. Trump's team today arguing Trump has never threatened the judge or his principal law clerk and can't be held responsible for actions taken by others. But others did take action, as they almost always do. Trump's remarks resulted in hundreds of threats and smears against the judge and his clerk. A court officer, Captain, signed a sworn statement saying that the threats are, quote, considered to be serious and credible and not hypothetical or speculative. The court filing transcribed multiple voicemails left on Judge Engeron's phone. We want to show you just two examples. A warning, you might find some of it disturbing, of course.
Play the voicemail. I want to hear if it's in Trump's voice or not.
Some of you might like it based on my social media these days.
Fuck off.
One voicemail said, quote, filthy little Jews, and that's you, and I hate that word, and I hate putting people under group, but you are filthy little Jews. I mean, honestly, you should be assassinated, unquote.
That is a leftist.
Another said, quote, dirty Jews,
That's a
and I
leftist.
love Jewish people, but there's dirty Jews like you. You guys want to make it all about identity, and you know what? What dirty Jews and stupid go die, I hope you all die, unquote.
That is a leftist.
Let's talk about this. So, Joan.
That is, those are the people that went to the Reddit threads right there. I did not pre-watch this video. I did not know what was coming off of this. Those are the people I was talking about. Those are the people that went to the Reddit thread and said, what can we leave on Engeron's voicemail that will make the Donald look like the Hitler that we all think that he is? I promise you that's what that was. Give me a fucking break.
Trump's team today argued his threats to the judge and his law clerk do not justify a gag order. I know you're a First Amendment guy, but what do you think?
Yeah, so Trump's lawyers argue that this is unprecedented, and they're right. It would be unprecedented to do a gag order. It'd also be unprecedented for a guy with 91 indictments or what charges against him, still running for president and saying these kinds of things, never mind a former president, saying these kinds of things about a judge. So it's a great example of how hard cases make for bad law. I think a lot of this is just sort of a preamble to the criminal stuff where he has to try this stuff in court of opinion and intimidate witnesses and all that. I don't think there are any great answers here, though.
Naira, separately, the D.C. Appeals Court could rule at any time on a gag order on Trump's election subversion trial. Let's say that one or both of these gag orders are imposed against the former president. We're less than 50 days away from the Iowa caucus. You know, how will those headlines play with voters? The idea that he has, gag orders against him.
Oh, he has such a vast lead in the Republican primary, and the Republican Party right now is the party of obstruction, the party of the lack of democracy, my freedom versus yours. So it plays perfectly well with those primary voters, but it does do two things to our democracy. It turns away people from actively participating, whether as voters or to become
Our hegemony, by the way, not our democracy.
Election officials or to become judges. Public service becomes a danger when candidates like Trump are allowed to get away with this. And it also erodes the credibility of our democracy when justice is not swift, when a bureaucracy is used to stop the wheels of justice from holding the president accountable. And we all know that no one else would be able to get away with what President Trump has been saying or in flouting the rule of law.
Well, the other thing is it works, right? I mean, it works. And he knows it works.
And it's his best option given the reality of a lot of these cases.
So this book that McKay Coppins wrote about Romney, that one Republican congressman reportedly told Romney he wanted to vote to impeach Trump about January 6th, but he declined, quote, out of fear for his family's safety. A Senate leader was also discouraged from voting to convict for the reasons of personal safety. I mean, it's not that, he knows what he's doing, right?
Yeah, we want.
All right, I can't listen to this anymore. I can't listen to that spew and lie. That is a bunch of crap right there, and I think everybody knows it at this point. So, there's your gag order news in a segment that we're going to call Everything is Fine, This is Fine. Don't worry about this, everything is fine. We're just going to rapid fire these three. And then we'll talk a little bit about the economy. All right, from AS. Wells Fargo branches closing in the coming weeks. Full list. Karina Gonzalez and Gidget Alipala reporting. Wells Fargo and other banks continue to close branches across the country as banking habits change amid the rise of online banking. That's the cope that they're going to put with this too, by the way. It's just because of online banking. In recent months, Wells Fargo has closed 61 branches in September. The institution closed 25 locations, while another 15 shut down in October. As of November 18th, they have closed an additional 21 branches and are expected to carry out 4 more closures next month. This is fine. Everything is fine. And of course, they've shared the list of where they go. From the Daily Mail, PNC shutters 19 branches in a single week as U.S. Bank, JP Morgan, Chase, and Bank of America also close locations. Is your local affected? From Niren Gray Desai, consumer reporter for DailyMail.com. 7 banks filed to close 42 branches last week, leaving a growing number of Americans with limited access to basic financial services, which is another propaganda term that they like to use. PNC led the pack with 19 filings to the regulator between November 12th and November 18th. Of those, 5 are set to impact Pennsylvania, 4 were registered in Illinois, and 3 were in Texas. According to records published by the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, U.S. Bank announced the second highest number of closures, notifying the agency of plans to act 7 locations, 3 of which are in Tennessee. Bank of America and JP Morgan Chase said that they would each shutter 4 locations, while Huntington and Sterling notified of just 1 closure each. This is fine. Everything is fine. Greatest economy in the world. Let's not worry about the people who are losing their jobs at the end of all this. This is fine. Stop asking questions. Stop looking over here. Another one from AS, Bank of America branch closures in 2023. Here's the full list. Bank of America will close over 100 branches by the end of 2023. See the complete list to see if you are impacted. Arizona. And there is a list of confirmed closures and planned closures. A lot of stuff in California, looks like. But this is fine. Everything is fine. Don't worry about all these jobs, these people whose jobs are going away because their branch is closing. This is fine. Everything is fine. In electioneering in the economy, IRS postpones rule change on digital payment reporting for small businesses and side hustles. Because it was wildly unpopular and they know it. From Jeannie Sahadi. For the second year in a row, the IRS has decided to postpone implementation of a rule change that would affect tax filers who receive business income for their goods and services via payment apps and online marketplaces like Venmo, Cash App, Etsy, Airbnb, among others. The change might have resulted in 44 million more 1099-K forms being sent in January to such filers, including small business owners, freelancers, and those with side hustles and gig workers. In explaining why it's postponing implementation again, the IRS cited concern over potential taxpayer confusion and the need to make it easier for all parties to comply with the change. We spent many months gathering feedback from third-party groups and others, and it became increasingly clear we need additional time to effectively implement the new reporting requirements, said IRS Commissioner Danny Werfel. We want to make this as easy as possible for taxpayers. We will work to make the new reporting requirements easier for them, and we'll work closely with third-party groups, tax professionals, and others to find the smoothest path to ensure compliance with the law. No, they're going to table it until after the election year, is what they're going to do. Because they know if they come back and do this right now, they are going to lose a large chunk of the vote that is not going to fall for it when they say, oh, Donald is going to go and put you in chains. It's a bad idea and they know it. President Biden weighing in on what he thinks he's going to do with the economy. Let's listen.
We've been able to push back on Republicans so far. They haven't given up. They haven't given up. They still want to undo this progress we're making. They're proposing cuts in investments that could result in loss of jobs and infrastructure and in manufacturing. They want to make the whole supply chain more vulnerable. Their plan would offshore jobs, raise costs for seniors by repealing the insulin price reduction, the caps on out-of-pocket drug expenses, and the ability to negotiate lower drug prices that I secured in the Inflation Reduction Act. Their plan would cut Social Security benefits. Their plan would also cut Medicare,
No, it wouldn't.
providing more tax giveaways to the wealthy and the biggest corporations. But guess what? We won't let these things happen. We've been able to push back on Republicans so far. They haven't.
Now, of course, there's not any sort of proof behind any of this, other than something that one Florida representative put out and got roundly fucking rejected for. I'm sorry, senator. Cannot think of his name right now, but he's the junior senator for Rick Scott. That was it. No, not Rick Scott. Who's the Florida senator? Is it Rick Scott? It is Rick Scott. Yeah, something that Rick Scott put out and got roundly rejected for. But it's just everything in this is a lie. Oh, the Republicans are they're gonna repeal the caps on insulin that don't affect most people anyway. that I repeal first to go and make it and make it my thing, man. You're going to cut Social Security and give money away to the rich people, man. Man, do you want that, man? Friend of the show, Mira, millennial other, saying, literally everything is more expensive since you took office. All right, let's talk Derek Chauvin for a little bit. Ex-officer Derek Chauvin, convicted in George Floyd killing, was stabbed in prison, AP sources say. I'm not going to go too far into this because I know it's the Associated Press. But I noticed they didn't say murder this time. Where usually they love to throw that allegation around there. Big CME is going to hit the next 2 days. CME, I don't know what CME stands for. Michael R. Sisak reporting Derek Chauvin, the former Minneapolis police officer convicted of murdering George Floyd, was stabbed by another inmate and seriously injured on Friday at a federal prison in Arizona. A person familiar with the matter told the Associated Press. The attack happened at the Federal Correctional Institute, Tucson, a medium security prison. Surprise, surprise, that's been plagued by security lapses. Surprise, surprise, and staffing shortages. Surprise, fucking surprise. A coronal mass ejection. The person was not authorized to publicly discuss details of the attack and spoke to the Associated Press on the condition of anonymity. The Bureau of Prisons confirmed that an incarcerated person was assaulted at the FCI, Tucson, around 12:30 p.m. local time Friday. In a statement, the agency said responding employees contained the incident and performed life-saving measures before the inmate, who did not name, was taken to a hospital for further treatment and evaluation. No employees were injured and the FBI was notified, the Bureau of Prisons said. Visiting at the facility, which has about 380 inmates, has been suspended. Messages seeking comment were left with Chauvin's lawyers and the FBI. Chauvin's stabbing is the second high-profile attack on a federal prisoner in the last 5 months. In July, disgraced sports doctor Larry Nassar was stabbed by a fellow inmate at a federal penitentiary in Florida. I think it was a hit. I do. It seems a lot of things had to line up. And funny, we always hear about staffing shortages and security lapses when somebody high profile goes. I legitimately think this was an attempted hit. And I don't know that they were actually supposed to save him. Now, I don't know if it's because we got the toxicology report and it may actually come out and save his bacon, or if it's because he's outlived his usefulness at this point, or what the story is, but it just seems like a lot of things had to go back and line up perfectly in order for something like this to happen. Especially given the high profile of this, and you would think that this would happen much, much sooner, if given the opportunity. Chauvin was sent to FCI Tucson from a max security in Minnesota on August 2022 to simultaneously serve a 21-year federal sentence for violating Floyd's civil rights and a 22.5-year state sentence for second-degree murder. Chauvin's lawyer, Eric Nelson, had advocated for keeping him out of general population and away from other inmates, anticipating he'd be a target. In Minnesota, Chauvin was mainly kept in solitary, largely for his own protection, Nelson wrote in court papers last year. Now, as far as the information that came out of this from KARE 11 News, NBC, out of the Twin Cities, Chauvin's attorney still hasn't been informed on prison stabbing details. From Lou Raguse, The attorney who represented former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin in his appeal is frustrated by the lack of communication and information he's received since Chauvin was stabbed on Friday by a fellow inmate at the federal prison in Tucson. Bill Moorman says his office has still not received any communication from the Federal Bureau of Prisons, and says Chauvin's family was only officially notified on Sunday, 2 days after the attack. No, of course nobody's been charged in the attack. I find it troubling, Moorman said. Chauvin has been at the Tucson facility since he was sentenced in the summer of 22 for violating George Floyd's civil rights. The sentence overlaps his term for his second-degree murder conviction in the state court for Floyd's murder. The Bureau of Prisons said employees performed life-saving measures after the assault ran until an ambulance could take Chauvin to the hospital. Someone needs to be charged with a crime for doing that to him. He's there to serve his sentence that was issued by both state and federal courts here. He should not be subject to this kind of harm and extrajudicial punishment, Moorman said. Right, but that's the reason he was put in that facility, was so he could be subject to extrajudicial punishment. So, there we have that. You remember the Louisville shooting? Of course you don't. Didn't fit the narrative. So it came out of the news right away. Well, we've got some details about this one from WHAS 11 ABC. This is not an accident. Old National Bank shooting report released. Gunman left detailed manifesto. Now, I have not seen this manifesto yet, by the way. They've given excerpts of it, and we'll talk about those. I've not read this for myself, and I will come clean and say that. C.J. Daniels, Jay Skeba, and Joseph Garcia reporting. This story contains detailed accounts of mass murder and language some readers may find disturbing. New information revealed in the investigation into the Old National Bank shooting sheds more light on what may have driven the man to shoot and kill his colleagues in April. Connor Sturgeon, 25, shot and killed 5 bank employees in downtown Louisville on April 10, 2023. On Tuesday, Louisville Metro Police officially closed the investigation and released their findings to the public. Included in the 64-page report were letters to family and friends explaining what drove him to commit the crime and how he wanted to make a statement. On social media, Sturgeon made frequent posts saying, "They won't listen to words or protests. Let's see if they listen to this." Which tells me he was on the FBI's radar. LMPD found multiple notebooks where Sturgeon wrote daily diaries about his unhappiness with his job, society, and political issues. In one letter, Sturgeon writes, "This country and its politicians have decided that money is more valuable than lives. Let's see if that changes. Once the fat cats start feeling the pain, they won't listen to words or protests. Let's see if they listen to bullets." There were also bizarre rants about the corrupt Supreme Court, climate change, the National Rifle Association's lobbyist dollars, and a reference to Lincoln Park's Lost. Sturgeon's family publicly revealed on April 27th he was experiencing declining mental health and had attempted suicide in 2022, but was still able to go back and buy a firearm. That's public record. Whenever we have public record, especially in a healthcare setting like that, the first thing I always question is whether or not he was allowed to buy these firearms. The family told investigators he's been in active therapy and was on various medications. However, on Easter Sunday, when the gunman spent time with his family, they didn't notice any signs that anything was wrong. Psychopaths like me, in his letter to his mother and father, Sturgeon said he'd been struggling with the pressure of life, the expectations, and felt like there was nothing to work towards. He also described how easy it was for him to purchase an AR-15, and it was, of course, an AR-15, just days before the shooting. "Oh my God, this is so easy," the gunman wrote. "Seriously, I knew it would be doable, but this is ridiculous. Walked in and bought a gun, 4 mags, and 120 rounds for $700. Where?" That's a $1,200 firearm that he used. Where? He mocked Kentucky's gun laws and thanked the NRA for their lobbying dollars and said that the one who made all this possible. All he had to do was lie that a friend got his house broken into, check some boxes I hadn't been institutionalized, false, or would use it for violence, also false. Again, if he went in for a suicide attempt, then he was on the FBI's radar. He called himself a psycho, telling his parents to fight lawmakers on lax gun laws, asking them to do what you can to help others and stop the sale of WMDs to psychopaths like me. The night before the shooting, Sturgeon wrote in another letter that he was tired of fighting and was never going to reach anywhere near my full potential. In the end, Sturgeon said he had two goals: to kill himself and to stop gun violence, to send a message to politicians. So, again, we're sitting in a situation of left-wing violence. Which is part of the reason that this probably got swept under the rug. Like, I'm a little bit surprised that I even heard about this, and pretty much the only reason this is on is because of this X from End Wokeness, who says, Louisville Manifesto released on April 10, 2023. Connor Sturgeon was gunned down. Several people at the Old National Bank 5 were killed. The shooter wrote in his notebook that he targeted upper-class white people and wanted to attack the attack to spur gun control. This was far-left terrorism, which it was. Now the Washington Post is going to, of course, try to hide this, and we'll just gloss over these couple for a minute. Louisville bank shooter killed 5 people to highlight gun laws, police report shows. Because the Washington Post is going to sit and spin this into the most favorable light towards gun control, instead of a far-left terrorist attack that this was. But Fox News, trying to toe the right-wing line, of course, Louisville bank shooter wanted to massacre upper-class white people to highlight lax gun laws. Journal. Villainizing the socioeconomic far-left side of this guy's violence. And realistically, I'm still going to stay on my hobby horse of the fact that what happened here was allowed to happen. Somebody looked the other way, because there is no way that background check should have come clean. Also, $700 for an AR, 4 mags, and 120 rounds of ammo. The gun itself costs more than that. But this one is going swept under the rug in a hurry, unfortunately. This is 2 now, where we see confirmation of far-left terrorism. And that's what this is. Make no mistake, when it goes the other direction, when we hear and we read a manifesto that conveniently gets released the same day, by the way, and they make such an excited effort to stop the spread and make sure that you can't. No, please don't read this manifesto that screams about blacks and the Jays. Please don't read this one. No, stop. When you can have that manifesto in a day, and this happened in April, and we're only hearing about the motives now, once everything's closed. And did you hear anything about this in any mainstream reporting anywhere? Was this a front page headline, or did this get swept under the rug by what's happening in Israel and Gaza again? I've got one video here from Just the News. No, Just the News is going to come out and confirm that they don't know if this was a tacit admission that the DC police planned what happened on January 6th. I'm going to play the video, and you can decide. Headline says, January 6th police video captures Metro DC officer saying, "We go undercover as Antifa." Short read from this one. Just the News on Tuesday obtained footage of an undercover Washington, D.C. Metro Police Department officer recorded by his camera behind police lines in the U.S. Capitol grounds. The footage was obtained directly from official sources and has not been altered. He is seen giving water to his fellow police officers who were suffering from the effects of tear gas, which the Capitol Police had deployed against the pro-Trump protesters. The footage showed the officer in plainclothes with a gray jacket spotted in the video, and identifying him as a police officer is a badge hanging around his neck. While helping his fellow officer, the undercover officer told his colleague that we go undercover as Antifa in a crowd. The footage, embedded in the player above, was turned over to Congress recently to investigators for House Administration Oversight Subcommittee Chairman Barry Loudermilk, who are investigating the official police response on January 6th. Disclaimer. Coming from the article, the video does not make clear whether the officer was referring to being undercover as Antifa and the crowd of Trump supporters gathered at the Capitol that day, or to any prior experience with Antifa protests such as the summer 2020 BLM riots that swept the country. I'm going to play the clip. That's all we're going to do on this one, and you make the decision for yourself what you think that this is. Let's have a listen.
Jeez, will we go undercover? Jeez, will we go undercover as Antifa in a crowd? So, can you put that back in? All right, thank you so much. Yep, it feels better. You guys get sprayed. Here. Take this orange bottle.
All right. Now, again, that's not very clear. The fact that there were plainclothes officers in the crowd, though, that I have problems with that. I do have problems with that. And now that we see what the officer was wearing, and it didn't show his face so much, but if there was anybody at the instigating part, the people who were breaking the windows, that was wearing that same outfit at the time. It's not the smoking gun. From what I can see from this, it's not the smoking gun. But it's enough there to go and raise some more questions about what happened that day. And how much of it we should believe. That's the way I see it from that clip. You may have seen something different. Dual Helix talking about the Kansas case. I'm sorry, Kentucky, not Kansas. They said it was a disgruntled employee, if I remember. He didn't say, let me make myself clear, like Karine. All right, in breaking news, we're going to get through some of the stuff. We're going to get to the hostage stuff here. And then we'll do things I like and things I hate and head out of here for the day. But Elon is back in the news once again with more people pulling their advertising from X. Elon Musk has boosted the Pizzagate conspiracy theory 5 times in the last 2 weeks. From Ben Goggin. Elon Musk continued to boost debunked. I don't even know if I can say that on YouTube. I should maybe try to censor that word. Should also maybe go over and look and see if I'm still on YouTube for that one, for saying that word. Because I know, like, the generational gap when they were still active before they were the Porch Boys have been taken off the air for saying cheese pie fence store. And I just willy-nilly popped it out there like, oops. I'm still on. They haven't cut me off yet. Although I just got an email, that might be my strike right there. Elon Musk continued to boost a debunk conspiracy theory Tuesday, posting and later deleting a meme on X that referred to a fringe far-right claim that sought to connect members of the Democrat Party with child abuse. Musk wrote, "Does that seem a little suspicious?" alongside a meme drawing from the TV show The Office, which included fake dialogue superimposed on image of a character arguing that cheese pie fence store is real, a reference to conspiracy theory that gained traction in 2016 and culminated with a North Carolina man's opening fire at a Washington, D.C. pizza restaurant. NPC News reviewed the post before it was taken down. In another post replying to the first, Musk linked to a Associated Press article published by NPC about an ABC News journalist pleading guilty to federal child porn charges. NPC News could not locate any content related to Cheese Pie Fence Store published by the ABC News journalist or on his archived author page. X did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Since November 20th, Musk has responded to tweets referring to Cheese Pie Fence Store 4 other times. The posts are a recent iteration of the debunked theory, focused on an unfounding insinuations that journalists were part of the conspiracy theory. Musk remains embroiled in a controversy for the X post this month, which he boosted an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. Since then, he's denied he's anti-Semitic, visiting Israel and meeting with government officials, including Netanyahu. So, I mean, and what's wild about this is, number one, I might actually take a strike off of this one because of the fact that I said those words, but and do tell me if I get cut off in stream. I'm gonna go check Twitch right now, just to make sure. No, I'm still up everywhere. They haven't taken me down. Wouldn't that be the thing that gets me popped? Like, a lot of this is not necessarily the same, like, with Media Matters, what they did with the thing. When they went and got all these big advertisers to come back out here. Now, at this point, the Washington Post has said that they're not going to advertise on X, which, fucking fantastic. They're still going to post there, so they're still going to get their clicks, but you might not get urged to go buy a subscription to Bezos' newspaper. Elon Musk is a memester. If you don't like his content, don't follow him. Don't use his platform. But so many of these people, they just want to be the first one out there. And it's like they do the same thing on Truth Social with the Donald. And they did the same thing when the Donald was on Twitter, back when it was still Twitter. They do the same thing with Elon. They do the same thing with Matt Gaetz, by the way. They sit there and they infinitely, they hover on their page. And they infinitely refresh it every second. Some of them probably have automatic bots to do that, and they just refresh the page over and over again until they see a new X on there. And then they jump to action and say, oh my god, he said something racist. He said something racist. I'm going to be the first one to say something. I'm going to be the first one to call him a racist. He said something racist. I'm going to report on it. Oh my god, 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 oh my god. They do the same thing with Elon. They can't quit his platform. Some of them actually did. Thank God. I'll talk about that, things I like and things that I hate. But you can curate your own experience on X. Now, I have chosen to have an experience where I have nobody blocked on X. I have not blocked anybody on the platform whatsoever. And yes, it gets absolutely 100% irritating because they continually, over and over, feed me the Krappensteins, and Jersey, My Wife's Son Reliant, and JoJo from Joy's, and Victor Shi, and Sisson, and all those stupid fucks over on that side of the aisle because they want me to go back and comment and re-X and retweet. Because the more people that look at those posts, the more money comes into X's coffers. Whereas, like, I just want to see Stephen Ignoramus and Brit and Freckled Liberty and Right Girl Problems and people like that. That's how I want my platform to be. But, again, I don't want... Well, number one, I think that everybody should have the opportunity to hear my voice, so I can't block anybody. I've got a few people muted, for the most part. And I've been blocked by plenty of people. I've been blocked by a lot of people on that platform. But as far as Elon goes, again, I mean, if you don't like him, don't listen to him. But then they can't sit up on the platform and say, he said something racist, I'm going to be the first one to say something about, oh my God, 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 oh my God. He's such a racist, I'm going to be the one that tells him, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And yes, there are people who make a career out of doing exactly that. All right, let's talk about the Rainbow Bridge. The biggest nothing burger of the week, Raw's alerts. New surveillance footage captures the moment when the car bombing occurred and exploded at the toll booth of the Rainbow Bridge on the U.S.-Canadian border at Niagara Falls. By the way, to lighten the mood off of something like this, yes, and I'm going to lighten the mood in spite of the fact that people died. I'm going to tell you guys a bad joke. Are you ready? What's the difference between the first honeymoon and the second honeymoon? First honeymoon, Niagara. Second honeymoon, Viagra. Alright, now let's talk about people dying. New surveillance footage captures the moment when a car bombing occurred and exploded at the toll booth of the Rainbow Bridge on the U.S.-Canadian border in Niagara Falls. Authorities are now searching for a second vehicle linked to the terrorist attack. Nearby airports are being searched and government buildings are being evacuated and closed. Now, very quickly on this, we were told that you were an evil conspiracy theorist if you called this a terrorist attack, and it seems to, by the media, have been confirmed that this was not a terrorist attack. In fact, this was somebody who just had car problems and his or her Rolls Royce just spontaneously burst into flames. I don't know how much I buy that, but there's not enough evidence out there to contradict it either. So it is going to be the official story that I go with suspicion, of course, on my shoulder. ABC News reporting FBI Rainbow Bridge crash, explosion not connected to terrorism, from Emily Shapiro, Aaron Katursky, Josh Margolin, and Luke Barr. The two passengers who were killed in the Rainbow Bridge incident have been identified as husband and wife, according to Department of Homeland Security documentation obtained by ABC News. One of the victims was a Western New York resident, Governor Hochul has said. DHS has conducted a database queries on both individuals and found no criminal history or derogatory information, the document said. The FBI said Wednesday it was turning the car crash and explosion that occurred at the border earlier in the day to the Niagara Falls Police Department as a traffic investigation. FBI Buffalo has concluded our investigation at the scene of the Rainbow Bridge incident. In search of the scene revealed no explosive materials and no terrorism nexus was identified, a statement from the agency said. Well, there's always the possibility that there was still a patsy. Again, I have questions about this, but not enough evidence to make an official allegation to it. The agency's conclusions echo what Hochul said to the media. There was no evidence the crash on the U.S. side of the Rainbow Bridge, which connects the U.S. to Canada at Niagara, was a terrorist attack. She also told reporters there was no indication of any explosives at the scene. A vehicle raced towards the border checkpoint on the U.S. side of the bridge, hit a booth, exploded, and went airborne, Hochul said. You actually had to look at it and say, was this generated by AI, because it was so surreal to see how high in the air this vehicle went, and then the crash and the explosion and the fire. One booth agent was injured in the incident and was treated for their injuries at the hospital. They were released later that day, Hochul said. It was a very congested area, Hochul said, adding it could have been very cataclysmic. And again, that does raise the questions for me as to how we so quickly determined that this was not a terroristic incident. Now, this was also, this was a high-end car. This was a Rolls Royce that did this. they're not known for manufacturing defects because Rolls-Royces are handmade and go through extremely rigorous testing standards. So I have a lot of questions about this. A ton. I know the Mogwai is going to make fun of me later on this one and say, oh yeah, J. Edgar has questions. Yeah, I have questions. And this could be just a spark in the fuel system of some sort. A problem in the evaporative emission system. I don't believe it was an EV. I know that Helix asked if it's an electric vehicle. No, because as far as I know, Rolls-Royce doesn't make an EV. Let me double check that for myself. Oh, I suppose they do. The Spectre. The world's first ultra-luxury electric super coupe. Is an emblem of artisanship in harmony with electric technology, the marque's first all-electric motor car. I was wrong. They do make an EV. I did not know that. It is a $420,000 car. I don't know if it's even been released yet. Because when they do the... oh, that's a review, not a preview. The review that I see from here from Business Insider was from July 9th, 2023. So it's likely something very, very, very brand new. But I mean, no matter what, if you have a... If you got a Rolls Royce, you got some money. But even there, it was not enough to... Like, it slowed everything down no matter what. Daily Mail reporting Thanksgiving travel nightmare begins after terror blast at Rainbow Bridge. Amtrak halts trains between Canada and New York as Buffalo Airport screens every car. Which, even if they don't determine a terrorist motivation, at the time they probably should go screen every car at the time. For a reasonable amount of time afterwards. Just in case. While they're still investigating. But they closed this one pretty quick. Like within a few hours. Rachel Bowman for DailyMail.com reporting. Yeah, 200 plus mile range, so it's got a big battery. Yeah, it does. Thanksgiving travel is underway, and record numbers of Americans are taking planes, trains, and automobiles to reach their holiday destinations, creating travel chaos across the country. In the wake of the explosion at the U.S.-Canada border, Amtrak has suspended service for Train 63 between Niagara Falls and Toronto. All vehicles coming into the Buffalo-Niagara International Airport are being screened in response to the Rainbow Bridge attempted terror attack at Niagara Falls crossing. The airport has closed to all departing and arriving international flights, however, domestic flights are still scheduled. All 4 border crossings connecting Ontario to Western New York are closed: Rainbow Bridge, Lewiston, Whirlpool, and Peace Bridge. Hochul said the New York State Police is actively working with the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force to monitor all points of entry to New York. I don't know. Again, I have questions about this one. I have a lot of questions. Like, I'm not going to jump to the same conclusion that Ted Cruz says and accuse, this is definitely terrorism. And this is the Biden admin's fault. But I can't not have questions about something like this. Alright, let's talk about the hostages. And then I think we're going to call it a night after that one. So Biden got to take a little bit of a victory lap by getting several of the hostages released during a temporary ceasefire, which Hamas is probably regrouping, and the IDF is also probably regrouping at the same time for something that's going to come here for a while. But we're going to do a little bit of where this started and how this is going. Jennifer Jacobs reporting, U.S. doesn't expect any Americans to be released. in the first group today, but hopes that there will be among the 50 released. Kayla Gardner reports from NBC News White House statement after the release of the hostages. Let's blow this up real quick. We're glad to see the process moving forward, working by the hour to get those Americans included in this first group of 50, including little Abigail, who turns 4 today, which they did wind up getting little Abigail involved in this. So, on the hostage deal from the Associated Press, how the hostage deal came about. Negotiations stumbled, but persistence finally won out. Colleen Long, Sung Min Kim, Sam Magdy, and Julia Frankel reporting. The negotiations hardly ran smoothly, but in the end, persistence paid off. 6 weeks ago, not long after Hamas killed more than 1,200 people in Israel and took scores of others hostage, in a surprise assault, the government of Qatar quietly reached out to the U.S. to discuss how to secure the release of those who were taken captive by the militant group. But the mission demanded extreme sensitivity. It was so secret, U.S. officials established a communication cell to reach Hamas directly and kept those negotiations tightly guarded throughout the U.S. government, which is code for they don't want you to know that Joe Biden wasn't the one that did it. It was somebody in his cabinet. Only a handful of people were aware of the talks, according to a senior White House official. The cell allowed a small circle of negotiators to speak regularly without additional bureaucracy. U.S. and Israeli officials spent weeks scrambling to put together a deal that would free dozens of hostages held by Hamas. The White House saw that as the only realistic way to halt the bloody combat that was devastated the region for more than 6 weeks. The U.S. continuously pushed Hamas, with Qatar and Egypt acting as critical intermediaries, all the while Biden and other senior U.S. officials, which translates to other senior U.S. officials, assured distraught family members of hostages through the emotional Zooms and in-person meetings that they were doing everything they could to secure their loved ones' release. The U.S. president was still working on the hostage deal as late as Wednesday, in phone calls with Netanyahu and other world leaders, stressing the importance of moving from agreement to actual release. Biden vowed that he would not relent until all American hostages in Gaza were released. Well, he got one. There was a final hiccup in the agreement both sides apparently had reached. Talks continued, and no hostages were to be released before Friday. Biden said the White House had been working tirelessly to secure the release of hostages since the earliest moments of Hamas's brutal assault. This account of how the hostage deal came together was described by a senior White House official and 2 Egyptian officials who were granted anonymity to discuss the sensitive negotiations, as well as accounts in Israeli media. The cell to communicate with Hamas was established by Brett McGurk, the National Security Council's coordinator for the Middle East, and Josh Geltzer, legal advisor to the National Security Council. McGurk would speak every morning with Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman bin Jassim Al Thani, the Qatari Prime Minister, while Jake Sullivan, the White House National Security Advisor, communicated daily with his Israeli counterparts, with Biden being briefed throughout. Also critical was CIA Director Bill Burns, who had been talking with David Barnea, the director of Mossad, the Israeli intelligence agency. They go to such lengths to not tell you that Biden was not involved in this, while actually saying that Biden was not involved in this. Brett McGurk, Josh Geltzer, Jake Sullivan, and Bill Burns, while Biden was being briefed daily. So he technically has knowledge of this and was signing off on it. And every leftoid shill took to X on Twitter to tell you you were a horrible person if you didn't give Biden enough credit for what he did with this. Bullshit. That's what I have to say with that. One of the funniest things that came out of this, and I saw a lot of quote tweets on this meme, but Biden gave a speech. Got a 1 minute and 14 second clip of this one here. Just the opening here, Tom Elliott. I cannot prove what I'm about to say, but Hamas attacked Israel because I was very close to bring peace to the region. Let's listen.
President, you said you were hoping to get cooperation from Arab leaders. What are you hearing from them when you talk to them? What would you like to see them do?
I'm hearing a lot, but I'm not going to speak to it right now. There's an overwhelming desire on the part of the region to, let me back up. I cannot prove what I'm about to say, but I believe one of the reasons why Hamas struck when they did was they knew that I was working very closely with the Saudis and others in the region to bring peace to the region by having recognition of Israel and Israel's right to exist. You may recall,
you mean the Abraham Accords?
Did the G20 about a little while ago. I was able to get a resolution, a statement passed through there saying we're going to build a railroad from Riyadh all the way through the Middle East into Saudi Arabia, Israel, etc., and all the way up to Europe. Not the railroad, but it would be an underground pipeline and then railroad. The whole idea is there's overwhelming interest, and I think most Arab nations know it, in coordinating with one another to change the dynamic in their region for longer-term peace. And that is what I'm going to continue to work on. Thank you all very, very much. I appreciate it.
The serial plagiarist just took credit for the Abraham Accords. That happened 2 years before he took office. Yes, you heard that right. And I can't prove what I'm about to say. I saw a lot of quotes and memes on this one. My favorite was my own. Because I quote X'd this X and said, I cannot prove what I'm about to say, but the only reason Ashley Tisdale married that singer is because I am too attractive. Yeah, I went there. All right, let's talk about the second release. Got a couple more things that we're going to cover with that one. So from The Hill, 4-year-old American hostage released by Hamas, Biden says. Let me actually go to the Associated Press one because that's a little bit more detailed. I threw the Hill one in there as a follow-up. Hamas releases a third group of hostages as part of truce and says it will seek to extend the deal. The fragile ceasefire between Israel and Hamas was back on track on Sunday as the militants freed 17 more hostages, including 14 Israelis and the first American. So it took 3 exchanges before you actually got an American. In a third exchange under a 4-day truce that the United States said it hoped would be extended in turn, Israel released 39 Palestinian prisoners. I also, by the way, I do notice the propaganda that's in this. When they say hostages that Hamas holds, but Israel is holding prisoners. It's subtle, but it's there. Most hostages were handed over directly to Israel, waving to a cheering crowd as they arrived at an Air Force base. Others left through Egypt. Israel's army said that one was airlifted to a hospital, and the director of Soroka Medical Center said Elma Abraham, 84, was in life-threatening condition as a result of an extended period of time when an elderly woman was not taken care of as needed. Well, I hate to tell you this, but the 84-year-old woman was passed around among Palestinian soldiers as well. The 84-year-old woman went through a horrifying time, and unfortunately, so did probably this little girl. I hate to think about that. But I know how the atrocities of war go, too. Most hostages were handed over directly to Israel, waving to a cheering crowd as they arrived at an Air Force base. Oh, I read that one already. The youngest hostage release was Abigail Eden, a 4-year-old girl and dual Israeli-American citizen whose parents were killed in the Hamas attack that started the war on October 7th. Oh, what she endured was unthinkable, Biden said at the first American freed under the truce. He did not know her condition and did not provide updates on the American hostages. Biden said his goal was to extend the ceasefire deal as long as possible. Well, I'd like to see that too. I'd like to see it extended forever, but we are not in a leveraged position to do so. I think you've used up all your political capital on this one. In all, 9 children, 17 and younger, were on the list. According to Prime Minister Netanyahu's office, 3 more Thai nationals were released. Separately, Hamas said it released a Russian hostage in response to the efforts of Russian President Vladimir Putin. The 3 Thai nationals were undergoing health checks at a medical center in Israel and brought the total number of Thai hostages released to 17. Thailand's foreign ministry said it was pursuing efforts for a safe release of the 15 remaining Thai hostages. Thais working in Israel are mostly employed as semi-skilled farm laborers at wages considerably higher than those that they can earn at home. Sound familiar? So, I don't know if we have a word on how many hostages are held by Hamas right now, but we do have 39 back. They're saying probably about 240 is the estimate. But we got 39 back. No word as to how much longer this is going to go, but again, we did get the one little girl back, and I hope that we get more Americans back out of this, but I mean, this does seem like a very lopsided deal. That goes in Hamas's favor too, so we have that avenue to things. Eric Swalwell weighing in on this one. We're at the 2-hour mark, and we still got things I like and things that I hate. Swalwell, in his absolute expertise of foreign policy that he got from Fang Fang, if Trump was reelected, or if Trump was president at this time, can you imagine what scenario would be in the Middle East? Well, yeah, I can, because we had 4 years of relative peace at the time. Like, I'm old enough to remember when we didn't worry about the Middle East popping off because I'm more than 4 years old.
Would you like to see the United States doing more to pressure Prime Minister Netanyahu to take more steps to reduce civilian casualties?
Yes, well, first, President Biden has done that. And I also like to step back when I see some of the heat President Biden is taking and think, what would the alternative be? If Donald Trump was reelected or if Donald Trump was president at this time, can you imagine what the scenario would be in the Middle East? It would probably be the United States and Israel in a World War III-like scenario with Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas. President Biden has not sent a single American into the conflict.
You tried to pull this propaganda at the beginning of his presidency and it didn't pan out. What the fuck makes you think it's going to work this time?
But he is now pulling American hostages out of the conflict. We're supporting Israel. We're getting aid into the region. So far, we've held off other enemies of Israel and America. That's why President Biden was elected, and that's why I think he needs to be given, the room to negotiate, what is ultimately a resolution to this conflict.
Would you like to see the...
Never mind the fact that, quote, other enemies of Israel have been taking potshots at our people since this whole thing began. Allegedly. Funny we don't talk about that anymore, once we got the indicator that war was still unpopular among the vast majority of the proletariat. And Biden can't keep his party in line because he can't see which side they want to go back and... This whole thing is a mess. And it's a little bit rich for Eric Swalwell to come back out and, again, try to pull the tired line of Donald Trump's going to start World War III. Meanwhile, we're involved on 2 different fronts, and a third one is threatening to boil over at any second. In Providence police mall security are blocking the main entrance to the mall on St. Francis right now. On Francis Street right now. Crowd chanting, "No business as usual until Palestine is free," and "Shut it down, traffic is blocked." This is from last Monday. And the thing that always gets me is they always come back out and block traffic. Now, the people always say that the family member should sue if they block the ambulance that's carrying their family member, which should. But I don't necessarily know, especially with as invested as this administration is in Israel and their governance, what shutting down a mall that nobody goes to anymore because COVID shut all these things down is going to do. That's my big question, is what is it that you actually plan on doing with this? Because I don't see an end goal in sight anywhere. And the last one we'll touch on for this one, from the New York Post. NYPD calls for elevated vigilance during Rockefeller Center tree lighting as pro-Palestinian groups plan to flood the event. Craig McCarthy, Larry Salona, and Amanda Woods reporting for the New York Post. Police warned that elevated vigilance is necessary during this year's Christmas tree lighting ceremony at Rockefeller Center. According to an internal NYPD memo obtained by the Post on Tuesday, as pro-Palestinian protesters announced that they plan to flood the iconic event in support of Gaza. The memo notes that there are no specific or credible threats targeting the world-renowned annual event, which is expected to draw tens of thousands of revelers to Midtown on Wednesday. But that threat evaluation notice pointed out that mass gatherings and high-profile events such as the ceremony hosted this year by singer Kelly Clarkson could be easily targets for malicious actors looking to do harm during the holiday season. Since the bloody October 7th attack launched by Hamas on Israel, a variety of foreign terrorist organizations have persistently called for broad attacks on U.S. interests, the NYPD said in a memo. You know what's funny? I remember this exact rhetoric in 2001 and 2002. Make sure you go out to the tree lighting ceremony, otherwise the terrorists win. Go to the mall, buy yourself a new car and some new jewelry, otherwise the terrorists win. While that propaganda alone isn't a reliable cause for alarm, those incitements may resonate with the US-based homegrown violent extremists, Democrats, and mobilize some to action, necessitating elevated vigilance during the holiday season, it warned. The notice came just as the Palestinian-led community organization Within Our Lifetime, responsible for several other recent demonstrations in the city, announces plans to disrupt the tree lighting festivities. So I'm sure we'll have a report on this tomorrow, and it'll probably roll in, so I'll be watching live chat especially close tomorrow while we're playing Final Fantasy X tomorrow. Because I plan to do that tomorrow night, still, in the midst of all this. So we might actually have breaking news on a night that we don't do news. Something to watch for with that. Alright, that's all that I have for the news for the day, for the week. Let's move on and let's do a couple things that I like and a couple things that I hate. I'm going to skip rules of acquisition today because I was stupid and I didn't set it up beforehand, and we are over the 2-hour mark again. So, things that I like today, starting with our holiday announcement. I do this every year, at about this time, by the way. We all sit here and dread a certain Mariah Carey song, and we start dreading it right after Halloween. We know the song. We don't want to hear the song, and I'm not going to make you listen to the song. I'm not a huge fan of that song. I wasn't in the 90s when it came out either. But around the same time, a little known, I don't even know what you would call them, act, maybe a comedy act, came out, and outside of the comedy of their regular album, and it's a Christmas album that they put out one serious song that usually took to the airwaves on all your local country stations. I don't know how widely this was disseminated outside of Wisconsin, by the way. I know a lot of people don't know this song exists. It is the same name, All I Want for Christmas Is You, but it is a completely different song, completely different lyrics, song time, notes, pattern, etc. It's one of my favorite songs. I've done it on a talent show a couple times. It's an interesting difference sung by a man than a woman, because it's sung by a woman in this instance, but I'm going to share a couple bars of this song here with you guys and remind you that if you see that title, it may not be the dread that you're waiting for. This is Vince Vance and the Valiants. All I Want for Christmas Is You.
Take back the tinsel, stockings and bows, 'cause all I want for Christmas is you. I don't need expensive things, they don't matter to me. All that I want, it can't be found underneath the Christmas tree. You are the angel atop my tree. You are my dream come true. Santa can't bring me what I need, 'cause all I want for Christmas is you.
Beautiful song. Probably one of my favorites of the season. That's part of the reason I threw the lyrics in this in the intro to this particular episode. The singer of this one, because Vince Vance titled in the artist, is not the singer, obviously. The singer is Lisa Burgess Stewart, who actually performs now under the name Lisa Lane as a solo act. If you don't know this song, I recommend that you find it, just like I did, and finish out the rest of it, and maybe it'll become your favorite Christmas song too, because it is absolutely one of mine. Let's do a couple other things that I like today. Going back to Cheese Pie Fence Store. Keith Olbermann, in a lengthy tweet thread in which he rage quit the platform of X, says, after Elon's endorsement of QAnon, I can't say that word on YouTube, even though I did earlier, theory, I won't be posting here anymore. There are a couple of pre-scheduled promos for the podcast, the last runs, 10 p.m., I'm on the other socials under my name or some variation of Countdown with KO/Keith Olbermann. Which, as you can see, I quote X'd and said, huh, look at that. Elon really did make Twitter a better place. So long, Olbermann. You will not be missed, and in fact, we will give you the traditional send-off from Contemporary. So one of my friends just popped in on Instagram right before that hopped in, and obviously can't hear what's going on in the headphones because I can't transmit that to Instagram, and probably got very confused. I'll tell you about that later. All right, other things that I like today. Maryland handgun licensure law is unconstitutional, U.S. court rules. Which, of course, I'm always in favor of, because the more people who can effectively defend themselves legally, the better off this country is going to be. Now, of course, I'm not in favor of the criminally insane getting their hands on firearms as usual, the way the founders intended, the criminal lunacy, the things like that, but those people wouldn't be allowed to participate in society in other places as well. Let's read a bit from Reuters. A U.S. appeals court on Tuesday declared that Maryland's licensing requirements for people seeking to buy handguns were unconstitutional, citing a landmark U.S. Supreme Court decision last year that expanded gun rights. A 3-judge panel for the Richmond, Virginia-based 4th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals on a 2-1 vote blocked the enforcement of a 2013 Maryland law that required people to undergo training and background checks before applying for licenses to buy handguns, saying it violated the right to keep and bear arms under the U.S. Constitution's Second Amendment. Now, training and background checks. Of course, background checks are always going to be there no matter what because of other federal laws that are in place. And while I do believe that training is a good thing, I don't think it should be required for you to run back out and practice your right to defend yourself. But I do think that you should be encouraged to train as much as possible. You should go to the range. You should go practice. You should make sure that your armament feels comfortable in your hands, that you can effectively defend yourself. Because, I mean, if you don't train with it, you're effectively carrying a ticking time bomb with yourself. But I don't think it's the government's job to enforce you to do that. That's something that you should be responsible to do. So, New York State Rifle Pistol Association versus Bruin, the Bruin decision, wins again for the people of Maryland. Congratulations to Maryland. Speaking of firearms, the New York Post reporting, exploding wild pig population on the western Canadian prairie threatens to invade northern U.S. state. Well, it's too far west for me and the boys, where I'm at, to go back and control them, but man, if those wild pigs want to come just a little ways further east, we can help control that population and get some nice wild bacon in the process. The Associated Press reporting for the New York Post. Let me get the live chat back up here. An exploding population of hard-to-eradicate super pigs in Canada is threatening to spill south of the border. And northern states like Minnesota, oh, no, they are coming this far east. North Dakota and Montana are taking steps to stop the invasion. I have steps to stop the invasion. And again, get some bacon on top of it. Somebody call my brother-in-law. It's time to go find something else to hunt. And I know he goes and hunts in those states too. In Canada, the wild pigs roaming Alberta and Saskatchewan and Manitoba pose a new threat. They're often crossbreeds that combine the survival skills of a wild Eurasian boar with the size and high fertility of domestic swine to create a super pig that's spreading out of control. Gamey bacon. Ryan Brook, a professor at the University of Saskatchewan and one of Canada's leading authorities on the problem, calls feral swine the most invasive animal on the planet and an ecological train wreck. I'm still not hearing a problem here. Pigs are not native to North America. Yeah, we do know that. While they've roamed parts of the continent for centuries, Canada's problem dates back only to the 80s, when it encouraged farmers to raise wild boar. Brooks said, well, you get problems like that when you play God. When you try to change out the genetics of a species and try to get better things where better things don't belong. But all I'm hearing is a new source of bacon. Alright, I got, I think, one more thing I like, and then we'll do some things that I hate. Alright, from Fox News, Jewish Islamic groups back up Catholic school in lawsuit challenging New Michigan law. based Brianna Herlihy reporting. A Catholic school in Michigan that's challenging a new state law in federal court on religious freedom grounds is finding support from organizations of other religious faiths. The Sacred Heart of Jesus Parish in Grand Rapids and its school Sacred Heart Academy filed a lawsuit last year against the state of Michigan after the enactment of a new civil rights legislation that left out religious exemptions to its sexual orientation and gender identity policies. According to the lawsuit, without a religious exemption, the school would be forced to hire faculty and staff who lead lives that don't line up with Catholic teachings. Since the case was appealed to the Sixth Circuit, Sacred Heart earned support from the Jewish Coalition for Religious Liberty and the Religious Freedom Institute's Islam and Religion Freedom Action Team. The groups say that this new state law would have an especially deleterious effect on minority faiths. Though the facts underlying this appeal do not involve Islamic or Jewish expression or beliefs, the issue of religious entities' right to hire coreligionists is a form of concern to all faith groups and minority faiths especially. The brief filed in support of Sacred Heart states, and again, I mean, these are groups that are not going to want to go down this, and if they can come back and out and do it to a Catholic school, they can turn around and do it to an Islamic school and a Jewish school as well. And well, I know Michigan politics, and I know that it's not going to fly when they try to put the boot down on those two groups. It's not going to go over very well. And I enjoy seeing these groups come together because they've been at war for, well, since Christ was walking around. There have been issues between the Jewish, the Pharisees, and the newly forming Christians. And then go 500 years later and you throw the followers of Muhammad on top of that. These groups have been at war for centuries, over a millennia at this point. So to see them coming together and working together, that is something that I enjoy very, very much. Now let's do a couple of things that I hate. Alright, Daily Mail reporting cybercriminal troll group who call themselves Gay Furry Hackers break into nuclear lab in Idaho and steal personal information of researchers. You know, I'm just going to come out and say the thing that I hate the most is the fact that I just had to read that headline. Now, there are theories and questions as to whether or not some of what's happening with this stem back to Sam Britton, who was overseeing this branch of the government at the time. I cannot confirm or deny that on either side of that. There's not enough evidence to say that Sam Britton is involved in any of this. But the fact that it happened and I actually have to read this headline out loud just drives me up a wall. Robin Waugh for DailyMail.com reporting a hacktivist group who describes themselves as Gay Furry Hackers broke into the Idaho National Library Nuclear Research Lab and leaked the names of researchers online. The leaked data include full names, dates of birth, email addresses, and physical addresses, and was posted by the hackers on their Telegram channel with a claim that the group had accessed hundreds of thousands of details for users, researchers, and citizens. Although no nuclear research data was leaked, security experts say it was disconcerting that the names of America's top nuclear researchers have been leaked online. Like, do people actually not know who these people are? I don't know how secretive the nuclear scientist community is, but I mean, you gotta think, you're in Idaho, and you got somebody that makes $1 million a year. You gotta think that somebody knows who the dude is, or what he does for a living, or at least have an idea. So, and I don't know if they're doing this because, you know, like we were talking about in the Discord a little bit, the Greenpeace groups, they don't want a solution. They want Marxism. And nuclear power would be, I don't think it's the solution that a lot of my friends think that it is, but I think it's a massive step in the right direction to a solution. I think it's a big stepping stone to get to where we can be in a more carbon neutral society. And ironically enough, make EVs more environmentally friendly and more attainable as well. Nuclear power, if it was widespread, would boost the efficiency and the practicality of EVs. But they don't want a solution, they want the Marxism. Also, I don't understand. Like, do you want these dirty guys to go out and get dates because they have a bunch of money? I don't understand what you plan to accomplish with this. I mean, other than coming in and saying, hey, we can hack into this. That's the only thing I can think of. Because you got no nuclear secrets out of it that we know about. You basically got into an HR terminal. And that's it. I would assume that that's less highly secured. I don't know. Again, I don't know nuclear research. I didn't go to college for it. I know a lot about nuclear power, but I don't know up-and-coming research. Other things that I hate. Cynthia Nixon launches Hollywood-style hunger strike for Gaza ceasefire just 2 out of 5 days. So, an anorexic bimbo from a long-dead TV show is going to not eat 2 days out of the week. I expect this to change something. Olivia Land, Sex and the City supporting actress Cynthia Nixon, has joined a hunger strike demanding a permanent Israel-Hamas ceasefire, although she's doing it Hollywood style 2 out of the 5 days. You're doing this for attention. That's all you're doing. Screw off. Couple more. So, we get into the finance thing. That is, politically, that's what's interested me more than all, because I was hit disproportionately hard by the downturn. I've been able to recover mostly from this, but I was hit disproportionately hard by the downturn. But I've got this here, and again, this sparked another big discussion in the Discord of Putz coming out and trying to say that this woman should live within her means. Now, I actually listened to this, and this is a person, by the way, an RN, who should have a fantastic job, who should be making it, doing well. And she doesn't specify what her husband does, but by the fact that he's working a bunch of overtime, I'm guessing he's probably on par with her. This is most likely a 6-figure combined income household, and we don't know. I don't think she says where it is, but I mean, they're living modest house and just barely getting by. Again, she doesn't say what he does, but she's an RN. I know RNs that make $60,000, $70,000 a year. So let's listen to this video. And I mean, I keep hearing stories about this, like this. You know, people who work in all these second jobs out there. But let's have a listen.
I don't know why I'm making this video, but like, I feel like my husband and I are doing everything right. We both have good jobs. I'm a nurse. I'm a registered nurse. I work full-time. He works full-time. We just got paid this past Friday, right? We paid the mortgage. Bought some groceries. Put some gas in the car. And guys, it is Tuesday. And we have like $200 or $300 to last us until next Friday. Like, we don't live in a big house. We live in a little ranch. It's 1,100 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, us and our 2 kids. And like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm in school full time. I work full time. He works more than full time. He works overtime every week. I don't know what to do. I'm so stressed out. This isn't how it's supposed to be.
Well, and one of the things that I will point out in this video is that she said that she's in school full time on top of this as well, for the time being. And like, I'm not saying this is a permanent thing, but if you are struggling right now, maybe you could take a step away from the schooling for a year or two. I do know that it's hard to get back into. Trust me, I started an instance where I went to culinary school and I ran out of money, and there's no way that I can go back to it at this point. It would not happen again at this point. But what I will say with this is, I mean, this is not a situation where these people made bad decisions. They started this, they bought the house probably and had the kids while the economy was booming, exploding. And now the rug was pulled back out from under them again. I mean, if we didn't have those 3 years of exploding growth, I think a lot of people like this would have made likely very, very different decisions at a point in their life. I do. And I do hope the best for this couple. I do. And I hope it gets better. But, and again, there are people out there who are struggling harder, who don't have good jobs like they do. This is going around all the time. And, you know, people, you see this exploding job growth. A lot of that is people taking out a second job because they can't take out another line of credit to buy groceries. So I feel for them. I do. Last couple things that I hate. This will actually surprise people with my conservative leanings, but I disagree with DeSantis on this one. Surprise, I disagree with DeSantis. New Florida bill proposes strong restrictions of personal pronouns in workplaces. From Jim Saunders. In what could fuel a new round of legislative battles about gender identity, a House Republican on Tuesday filed a bill that would place strong restrictions on government agencies in the use of personal pronouns. The bill, HB 599, filed by Ryan Chamberlain of Bellevue for the 2024 legislative session, would also restrict workplace training about issues involving sexual orientation and gender identity. Mirroring parts of a law that the Republican-controlled legislature passed this spring about gender identity issues in the education system, the bill says it's the policy of the state that a person's sex is an immutable biological trait and that it's false to ascribe to a person a pronoun that does not correspond to such person's sex. The proposed bill would ban state and local government agencies from requiring employees and contractors to refer to other people using that person's preferred personal title or pronouns if such personal title or pronouns do not correspond to the person's sex as determined at birth. So, this has been a sticking point for me forever. It's always bothered me that there have been laws and attempts at laws to try to compel people to use the pronouns, but just on the opposite side of this, we also have laws that are trying to compel them not to use them at the same time. We don't need them on either side, really, realistically. There are people who are going to dead name and use the quote wrong pronouns, whichever side of that issue that you take. It's going to happen. It's going to go both directions. And you call that person an asshole and you move on with your life. This whole government thing on both sides of it, and like the thing with Florida and its ultra conservative aspects of things, is that Florida can only do this, for right now anyway, by their constitution, with government agencies. They cannot do this on private sector businesses. But they're going to try. And this is this is a big example of what happens when the rubber band snaps back the other direction. And they try to overcorrect going in the other direction. Employers or contractors could pursue violations through complaints to the Florida Commissions on Human Relations. It is unlawful employment practice for an employer to take adverse personal action against an employer contractor because the employee's contractor is deeply held religious or biology-based beliefs, including belief in traditional or biblical views of sexuality and marriage, or the employee's or contractor's disagreement with gender ideology, whether these views are expressed by the employer or contractor or at or away from the worksite, the bill says. So, I mean, this goes back to the trans bathroom thing. When the government is stepping in and saying which pronouns you can and can't use, the government has too much goddamn power. If they're telling me, if their biggest thing is telling you where you can pee, the government has too much power. Most people can figure it out on their own. New Jersey, joining list of states. New Jersey banning the sale of new gasoline-powered vehicles by 2035. That's not going to go over worth a shit because nobody's buying the EVs. Wayne Perry reporting. This is another, by the way, indication that the government has too much fucking power. New Jersey will prohibit the sale of new gasoline-powered vehicles by 2035 as part of an effort to improve air quality and reduce planet-warming pollutants, officials announced on Tuesday. It's Jersey! Jersey is an old English word for bad air. Don't fact check me on that because I know it's not true. But it's Jersey! You expect to have bad air in Jersey. A rule that will take effect on January 1st commits the state to an eventual move towards zero-emission vehicles, which are still powered by coal, especially in Jersey that has 4 coal plants in it. The State Department of Environmental Protection said in a news release. It's one of a growing number of states to do so, including California, Vermont, New York, Washington, Oregon, Massachusetts, Virginia, Rhode Island, Maryland, and Connecticut. 6 of those states would have a very, very big problem doing that, by the way. According to Cultura, a Seattle-based nonprofit advocating for an end to gasoline vehicle use. Again, I'm not like other conservatives. Well, I'm not a conservative, obviously. I'm more libertarian in my view, even though I think the LP is cringe. But I'm unlike a lot of my other conservative counterparts, because people see me as conservative, where I don't care if people want to drive an EV. They do need to be educated of the fact that it is still powered by coal. And if the automakers want to put them out there for people to buy, then put them out there for people to buy. But you shouldn't be compelled that that's the only thing that you should be able to buy. That's the government having too much power. The people that want them are going to gravitate to them, and if they actually have an advantage, people are going to want them more. Look at what happened with EFI, fuel injection. People went to that in a hurry. The industry standard to raise the horsepower, making vehicles work less on the highway, improving fuel economy. I mean, these are all things that happen naturally in the market. And now what they're trying to do with EV is they're trying to take the natural market force out of it and cram it down everybody's throats. This is a government that has too much power. I have no personal desire to own an electric vehicle. I know a lot of people who do have a desire to own an electric vehicle. And I think that they should be able to buy an electric vehicle if they want to, but they shouldn't be able to come back around and force me to give up my gas vehicle at the same time. So, and the last one that we have on things that I hate today, this is just stupidity in and of itself. This is a bunch of people who got it in their head to make a virtue signal statement over somebody who wasn't doing anything at all. Report of an armed man in your school causes stir in Midtown. From Ashley Paul. From News Channel 3 out of, I believe this is out of Nashville. Reports of a man carrying an assault-style rifle in Midtown sidewalks on Monday caused concern among neighbors. A photo circulating on social media platforms showed the unidentified man holding what appears to be a large firearm while walking on Peabody near Cooper. The news sent a nearby preschool and elementary school into a lockdown in spite of the fact that the guy was doing nothing illegal. He was being a moron and shouldn't have been holding the gun up. But he wasn't pointing. He wasn't on school grounds. He was doing nothing against the law. And there was no immediate danger. Memphis police had a heavy presence near Grace St. Luke's, Episcopal, and Peabody and Belvedere. Now, see, that I agree with. Have a police presence there. Because then you can react if he does do something stupid, but, well, illegal. Because he was already doing something stupid. I believe in open carry. I believe in concealed carry. If you're responsible, hold it on your back unslung so you can access it if you need to, if you're in a situation like that. But if you're walking down the street with it in both hands going, look at me, you're a fucking moron. If you got it strapped on your back, it's one thing. The photo sparked panic among parents in Midtown whose children attend nearby school. My heart is racing just thinking about it because you never know nowadays, said Jarnesia Spencer. You're a stranger walking around with a gun, let alone a rifle. So, being that my son is so close in proximity, it's scary. Parents at Grace St. Luke's Episcopal said they got a text just after noon that the school was in lockdown due to a suspicious person. My take on this one is a jump the gun for headlines. And again, I look at this guy too and I think to himself, were you hired to make a headline? Were you hired to make a problem where there wasn't a problem? Because again, if you're walking down the street, you're a fucking moron. You are. Strap it to your back like a normal person. Alright, that is everything. That is my rant on that. That was an interesting day on news, definitely. Got some more people in here. We go back to 6 p.m. Central Time next week. Because I want to see, again, I just want to see what time is best to get the most people in here since we can't do morning stream anymore. I do want to go back and do morning stream, but right now the work schedule does not allow it. Which is fine. We can take care of that. We can adapt as it goes. But definitely, let's get in. And I mean, if you're following me on X or you're in the Discord, let me know what seems to work a little bit better for you. Just keep in mind that I'm scheduled to work until 4:30. And we might have to start going a couple days a week again because, I mean, the news cycle is starting to get full again, and we're 5 weeks away from an election year. And you know it's going to explode at that point. They're going to find stuff to report on and try to keep you captivated in fear. Because if you're not captivated in fear, you might not go to the polls. Let me find my outro music and let's head out of here for the night. Where's the outro? From one great Stephen Ignoramus who made my outro music for me. Because he fucking rocks. If you don't follow Stephen Ignoramus, you should. Alright, let's get the background music down and let's head out of here for the day. Or we can sit back and lock up Explorer too. Still gotta update the RAM on the computer. But, alright, let's head out of here for the day. Thank you, everybody who came by, hung out, lurked, listened, chatted in the live chat. It's been a great time. It's been a great evening for you guys. I'll be back here tomorrow about 7 o'clock. We're going to do some Final Fantasy X. So come back and join me for that. I'm going to have the last of my Thanksgiving leftovers tomorrow. We'll come back and do that. And we'll be back here on Tuesday to see what the news and the headlines are. I've already got some stuff stirring in the pot for next week too. So I'm guessing it's going to be busy again. So come back and join me Tuesday night for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. If you are lurking on Twitch right now, stick around. We are going to go find somebody to raid over on that platform. Otherwise, thank you for joining me on the other platforms: Rumble, YouTube, DLive, Twitch, Facebook, Instagram. I see you over there. And come back and join me here next time for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. Take care. Have a good night. Who are we going to raid? Who is
Take
on
care.
right now? That is my voice. I don't want to hear that. Who's on right now? Who's on right now? Where did I know? Let's do this one that's playing Fallout 4. Tagamemnon. I don't know who this is, but we'll find out. Anyway, take care. Have a good night. We'll see you next time over here on Contemporary. And until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.